Hello everyone, and welcome to my Soap Twist 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Electra's hands flew out like twin serpents, slamming against Luna's shoulders. There was no warning, no final snarl, only the unexpected, savage power of betrayal. Luna's eyes widened for an inconceivable second, a moment of denial that this was how things would end, before her heels skidded on the wet yacht deck and gravity took over. Her body slid backward over the rail, arms pinwheeling through empty air, as the sea wind ripped a never-ending scream from her throat. Then the black Pacific devoured her completely. The splash was very minimal. A quick burst of white froth, a ring of waves rushing outward, and then nothing. Only the deep throbbing of the yacht's engines and the moist slap of waves against the hull. Electra stood at the rail, fingers wrapped tightly around the cold metal, chest heaving as if she had just struggled for breath. In the shower, her scarlet dress clung to her thighs and looked like fresh blood beneath the running lights. Luna did not get back up. Electra waited. 10 seconds.
20.
She numbered them in the same manner that some count rosary beads to remind themselves that they still believe in kindness. The ocean remained indifferent, huge and star-flecked, revealing none of its secrets. Luna was either battling for the surface or falling down into the darkness, hair fanning like ink, lungs flaming forth one final, futile struggle. Electra's lips parted. A laugh attempted to emerge but died somewhere in her throat, resulting in a sound that was half sob, half snarl. She'd done it. She had actually finished it. All the whispered preparations, the angry late-night vows in front of mirrors, the meticulous wiping of security footage, the faked text messages that would position Luna alone on deck, it had all come down to this single, irreversible push. She should feel triumphant. She had waited years for this moment, years of watching Luna glide through life like a blade wrapped in silk, stealing everything that should have been Electra's. The firm, the name, and the love of a man who was too ignorant to notice the viper in his ring. Every slight, every smug little smirk, every time Luna leaned in close enough for Electra to smell her fine perfume and whisper, "Be careful, cousin." Some of us recall where we came from, had been counted and stockpiled as ammo. Tonight, the ammunition had been depleted. Electra forced herself to turn away from the railing. The yacht continued to sail into the night, aiming for the secret cove where the real party would take place. Champagne, photographers, the official announcement of Luna's engagement to Finn, and the final nail in Electra's coffin of hope. Luna was meant to be the bright center of it all. Instead, she became fish food. Electra's heels clicked over the teak as she approached the salon doors. She glimpsed her reflection in the glass. Wild dark hair, blown-out pupils, and a trace of Luna's coral lipstick on her knuckles, where she'd grasped her right before the shove. She resembled a woman who had murdered someone, which, of course, she did. Inside, the air conditioner smacked her like a slap. The music pulsed low, with a pleasant summer beat that suddenly felt obscene. A dozen attractive people lounged on white leather, laughing too loudly, high on money and the illusion of safety. Nobody had noticed the brief ruckus on deck. No one had heard the splash from the engines or their own self-obsession. Electra mustered a smile that felt like broken glass. "Has anyone seen Luna?" she called, her voice pitched perfectly. Casual concern, nothing more. Heads turned. Finn was stretched in a corner banquette, shirt unbuttoned to the sternum and holding a glass of something golden. His eyes, those naively sincere eyes that had previously looked at Electra as if she were the only woman in the world, sharpened. "She was just out there with you," he explained softly. Electra let her smile wobble. "Was she? I came inside to get another drink. Perhaps she went up to the flybridge?" But even as she said it, she noticed the skepticism on his expression. Finn knew Luna detested heights. Everyone knew that. For the first time since the push, Electra felt a tickle of genuine fear crawl up her spine. She'd rehearsed this scene 100 times. Luna, drunk and wild, climbing the railing for a picture while losing her footing. Tragic accident. The ocean takes anything it wants. But Finn had already stood up, laying his glass down with a click that pierced through the music.
"I'll check," he said.
Electra's heartbeat was so strong she could taste metal. She followed him back out onto the deck, the others trailing behind like ducklings anticipating a storm. The wind had picked up, blew her hair across her face, and left a taste of salt and endings. Finn looked over the railing, examining the black lake. "Luna." His voice broke on the second syllable. Nothing responded except the slap of waves. Electra joined him, raising her voice in finely managed panic. "Oh my God, Finn. Do you think she fell?" He did not respond. As he clambered onto the rail, he was already throwing off his shoes, muscles tightening beneath tan skin. "No, Finn. It's too dark." Electra grasped his arm, her fingers pushing in firmly enough to leave a bruise. This was not part of the plan. If he went in after her and discovered the dead, Luna could still be alive down there, clinging to a buoy or a piece of trash. He shook her off as if she weighed nothing. "Call the Coast Guard." He barked at no one in particular before diving. The splash he made was bigger and cleaner. He appeared almost instantly, head turned and searching. Electra's thoughts raced. She needed him back on board. She needed the story locked down before anybody started questioning why Luna's phone was still in Electra's clutch, why the only fingerprints on the rail were Luna's from earlier in the evening, and why Electra's dress had a rip at the hem from when Luna grabbed at her in that last desperate second. She took out her phone and dialed 911 with somewhat shaky hands. As the call came in, she let herself tumble down to the deck, knees buckling theatrically. Someone behind her gasped. 911. What is your emergency? My cousin. Electra cried into the phone, tears falling freely now that some of them were genuine. She fell overboard. We're 12 miles off Malibu, and the yacht is called Siren's Call. Please hurry. She recited the coordinates she had learned weeks before, then let the phone slide from her fingers, as if astonishment had finally claimed her. Around her, the party devolved into turmoil, with girls screaming, guys shouting instructions, and someone cutting the music so abruptly that the quiet felt violent. Finn was still in the water, swimming in broad circles and yelling Luna's name until his voice broke. Electra closed her eyes and imagined Luna's expression in that final moment, shock giving way to something colder, almost like pity. As if Luna had seen right through every lie Electra had ever told herself and discovered her lacking. She opened her eyes again. The first red helicopter lights were already blinking on the horizon, with searchlights carving white wounds on the water. It was nearly over. Almost. Because Luna Nozawa had never been the type of woman to drown quietly. Luna's lungs were on fire and her limbs were lead, but she was still moving. The cold had knocked the air out of her body on impact, but she had clawed her way back to the surface once, just long enough to see the yacht's lights fade and hear Electra's voice shout out in phony concern. Then a wave slapped her under again. Luna had one edge that Electra was unaware of. She had grown up summering on these waters with a father who thought that little girls should be prepared to face any challenge. She could calmly hold her breath for 2.5 minutes. She was far from calm now, but muscle memory is a stubborn thing. She kicked out of her heels, allowing the weight to take the shoes down into the abyss. The dress was next, thick silk, attempting to drag her under like a jealous partner. She turned, found the side zipper with numb fingers, yanked it down and wriggled out. The cloth floated away like a jellyfish, leaving her with nothing but black lace panties and wrath. Rage was warmer than the Pacific in November. She broke the surface again, this time quieter, turning her face to the stars, allowing only her nose and mouth to clear the water. To the east, the boat appeared as a shrinking constellation of light. Finn's voice still echoed across the sea, raspy and frantic. She could have called out to him. With one shout, he would have discovered her. But Luna had noticed Electra standing at the rail, felt the purposeful shove, and heard the satisfaction in her cousin's breath as she crossed. If she allowed them to bring her back aboard, Electra would finish the job properly the next time. An overdose of something in her in the hospital, a sad relapse, a tumble down marble stairs. Electra never left any loose ends. So Luna let the tide carry her west, away from the boat and the searchlights that would scour this stretch of ocean for the next hour, before reporting herself lost. She swam with slow, controlled strokes, conserving energy and allowing the California current do the most of the job. She and Finn had previously anchored at a private beach 2 miles down the coast, inebriated on each other and cheap Prosecco. If she could get there before hypothermia set in, she'd have enough time to plan. Behind her, the first chopper thundered overhead, its headlights slicing down like a finger of God. She went beneath the next wave and stayed down until her lungs screamed, then surfaced in the chopper's blind area to continue swimming. Finn was carried on board the yacht, half-drowned and coughing seawater while cursing. Someone wrapped him with a blanket. Electra kneeled beside him, putting a towel to his face with hands that trembled just enough. "She's gone," he muttered, his eyes burning. "I looked everywhere." Electra forced herself to stroke his wet hair. "It's not your fault," she muttered, and the words tasted of victory and ash. The Coast Guard took statements. The guests were transported back to shore in the light of news helicopters, which had somehow learned of the heiress's disappearance. By the time the sirens' call moored at Marina del Rey, the tale had spread across the country. Luna Nozawa, a popular philanthropist and bride-to-be, was assumed dead following a horrific midnight accident. Electra stood on the pier in borrowed sweatpants, watching Finn deliver a statement to the police, his face scarred with pain. Cameras flashed. She placed her hand in his and squeezed. He did not squeeze back. Later, in the quiet mausoleum of the Nozawa family home, Electra poured herself a drink from the crystal decanter that had once been Luna's favorite. The home already felt different, quieter, like if it were holding its breath. Portraits of generations of Nozawa ladies peered down at her from the walls, their eyes all cold. Luna's picture would not join them now. There would be no body, no funeral, just an empty coffin, and a memorial service in which everyone would cry sweetly and move on. Electra raised her glass towards the empty room. "To loose ends," she remarked before drinking. 3 weeks later, the search was officially discontinued. The tabloids had shifted their focus to a senator's sex scandal. Finn stopped responding to Electra's calls. He had started to wandering barefoot on the beach at night, screaming Luna's name to the waves like a man torn between sadness and prayer. Electra did not mind the silence. She was busy. Her appointment as interim CEO of Nozawa Global was approved by the board, while probate proceedings were resolved. The will reading was scheduled for 2 days. Luna has always joked about leaving everything to charity just to see her family disintegrate. Electra had laughed along, but she had also ensured that Luna's lawyer had a costly cocaine habit and a gambling addiction. She stood in front of the mirror in her bedroom, trying on a diamond choker that had previously belonged to her grandmother. The stones reflected the light like little frozen screams. She looked nice in morning black. Her phone vibrated on the vanity. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, but then swiped to respond. "Congratulations," murmured a voice she recognized more than her own. Low, amused, and a little worn from weeks of inactivity. "You almost pulled it off." Electra's reflection became very still. The necklace instantly tightened around her throat. "Luna," she sighed. "Still breathing," Luna verified. "Tell me, cousin, how it feels to sleep in a deceased woman's bed." Electra's knees buckled. She caught herself on the vanity and knocked over a bottle of Luna's perfume. The aroma burst into the room, jasmine and something deeper, like smoke. "You're supposed to be." "Yes," I gathered. A gentle laugh. "You overlooked one thing, Electra. The ocean is large and patient. It finally returns what it took." "Where are you?" Electra's voice crackled like cheap glass. "Close enough to see you try on my jewels." I was close enough to witness Finn fading away while calling my name. Close enough to know exactly what you have planned for the board meeting tomorrow. Electra turned around, inspecting the dark windows and darkened corners of the room. Nothing moved. "This is impossible." "No," Luna replied calmly. "This is family." The call went dead. Electra stayed motionless for a long time, phone still placed to her ear. Then she threw it across the room. It smashed against Luna's painting, splitting the canvas directly across those famed violet eyes. She was still screaming 10 minutes later when the housekeeper discovered her, clawing at her own throat so hard that blood flowed from beneath the jewels. Outside, in the garden where security cameras had strangely failed for exactly 7 minutes the night before, a lady in a black sweatshirt lowered her binoculars. She witnessed Electra being sedated and carried to her room, the police arriving to take yet another statement, and Finn showing up intoxicated and being turned away at the gate. Luna smiled, tiny and keen. The ocean had given her back. It also taught her a few lessons about patience. She slipped the hoodie down, allowing moonlight to shine on her darkly dyed and short hair, cheekbones that had been carefully filled in, and eyes that were now hazel rather than the signature Nozawa violet. The world believed Luna had died. Good. The world would never see Luna coming. She turned and walked into the darkness, barefoot as Finn, leaving no footsteps in the dew-slick grass. A dog barked once in the distance before remaining silent. This was not the end. This was merely the beginning. And Electra was about to discover what happens when you push a Nozawa into the sea and expect her to remain down. The Pacific preserved its secrets, but it never failed to pay its bills. Luna Nozawa excelled at collecting. Electra had always had a capricious, electric quality, an unpredictable spark lurking beneath the surface. People around her felt it, even if they couldn't express it. Luna, on the other hand, was a presence that calmed storms rather than causing them. Her tenderness did not make her weak. In contrary, many underestimated the strength she possessed. Perhaps this was part of what made the moment so frightening, so incredible, when Electra's hands collided with Luna's shoulders and threw her backward into the churning waves below. For a heartbeat, time was split. Luna's eyes widened, displaying equal parts confusion and betrayal, as if she couldn't believe that Electra, someone she had once trusted, someone she had entrusted her heart to, had done the unfathomable. The wind conveyed her gasp as she plummeted, a tiny, mournful sound quickly drowned out by the boom of the waves. Then she hit the water. Electra stood at the cliff's edge, her chest rising and falling quickly, her pulse thumping so loudly that it drowned out the sea. She had not intended for it to get this far. At least, that is what she kept telling herself. The conflict had escalated. Words became accusations, which were twisted into confessions, and she was suddenly faced with the decision between ruin and survival. Panic and desperation combined in that moment to drive action. But the uproar had dissipated, and she was confronted with the harsh reality of what she had done. The ocean beneath was rough, its currents notoriously dangerous. Locals knew to avoid that area of beach, especially during the season when storms erupted without notice. Even experienced swimmers labored there as the tides pulled erratically, churning like a living organism defending its territory. Electra was aware of all this. Luna did as well. This made the deed even more horrific. Luna battled her way to the surface, but the cold struck her like a wall. Her limbs tightened instantaneously, and her lungs constricted as the shock of the water took her breath away. She kicked hard, battling her way through the dark swells, hoping to keep her head above water long enough to breathe, think, and survive. She didn't have time to contemplate Electra's treachery. Instead, she focused on her primordial want to survive. Above, Electra stepped back from the cliff, as if it had burned her. Her hands trembled violently. She could not remain. Someone might have seen. Someone might arrive. So she turned and ran, stumbling over pebbles, her mind already forming the beginnings of a story that would portray her as the terrified spectator rather than the offender. But no matter what story she gave the world, she couldn't escape the reality that echoed inside her. She had pushed Luna. Meanwhile, Luna's strength was fading. The waves pounded into her repeatedly, driving her below the surface before she could gather her breath. Salt stung her eyes, throat, and nose. Every time she surfaced, she gasped, yearning for just one more breath of oxygen. The idea crossed her mind. Is this how it ends? But she put it away. She was not ready to give up. Her mother's laughter, her father's voice telling her stories by lamplight, the friends who had supported her through every heartache and victory, everything came flooding back. They were anchors, each pulling her upward and encouraging her to keep fighting. She kicked harder, ignoring the pain in her muscles. She needed to find something that might offer her a chance. However, the coastline here was brutal. Jagged rocks protruded from the surf like broken teeth, and the next strip of sandy beach was out of reach even for a strong swimmer in calm weather. Luna was not in a tranquil environment. She was involved in a struggle. Suddenly, a ray of optimism emerged. A piece of driftwood, large enough to support some of her weight, bobbed nearby, propelled by the water. She forced her limbs to cooperate, paddling toward it with all of her remaining strength. Her fingers grazed it once, slipped, and finally gripped it firmly on the second time. She dragged herself halfway across, allowing it to support her chest as she struggled to breathe normally.